Initially introduced as a collection of parasites, the Hive has played a huge role in Hydra experiments in Marvel Comics. While they evolved from a single humanoid to multiple intelligent beings after latching onto human hosts, these creatures had a bright future ahead of them, especially after they had been written into Marvel TV shows such as Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. Today, we're going to be exploring the first appearance of Hive as well as prominent story arcs in the comics before breaking down their extensive role in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves though, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Hive Comics Earth 616. Who created Hive in the comics? On Earth 616, the primary Marvel Comics continuity, Hive came into existence at Hydra's underwater lab situated beneath the Indian Ocean while they were trying to come up with the physical embodiment of their ideals. Initially, Hive was created out of innumerable genetically engineered parasites, and one of their uninformed recruits was then looped in to act as the host. Soon enough, they started the process of merging the Hive into the host's body, but this was a tiresome endeavor, and it took them years and years to finish it. Under Kraken's strict eye, the Hive took a grotesque appearance with no identity of its own, and it was essentially described as a collective that dominated any host in its path. It also had a cunning personality and was regarded as a highly intelligent being who dedicated its entire existence towards serving Hydra and eventually became a member of its High Council. What was Hive's role during the Leviathan conflict? When Hydra declared war against their rival company, Leviathan, Valentina Allegra de Fontaine revealed her true nature and even killed Madame Viper. When Baron Strucker came across her corpse, he and the rest of the team were utterly shocked to see how the Hive immediately lashed out at it and merged with her corpse to reanimate it. While she returned to life in a way, the Hive's parasites had latched onto her head and she now had prehensile tentacles sprouting from a bulbous mass on top of her head. Soon enough, the High Council splintered and the Hive then fell under the Gorgon's jurisdiction when Nick Fury sent his son to destroy their base. During this incident, Hive fought back to such a great extent that Fury's son admitted defeat and even sacrificed himself by blowing up the entire place with a bomb. How did Hive serve during the Secret Empire storyline? Hive managed to survive this explosion and kept a low profile until Elisa Sinclair, who had been newly appointed Madam Hydra, tracked Hive down in an old temple in Egypt. They soon learned that Elisa had joined the new High Council of Hydra in order to serve Hydra Captain America. What powers make Hive a threat in the comics? For starters, Hive's bipedal body was essentially an amalgamation of many parasites that could act as individual entities and shoot away from the bodily mass to attack others. In this way, these individual components served as projectile weapons, and they also had the ability to come together and bond with other beings to resurrect or possess them. In addition to this, the Hive could communicate with other Hydra agents with the help of their own special language, and it could function on land as well as underwater. What weaknesses does the Hive have in comics? However, Hive did have a huge weakness as it had to rely on its human host. This meant that the Hive had to accept the physical limitations of being latched onto one body, and it could only boost the host's strengths and skills to some extent. It couldn't bestow them with additional powers such as flight or mind control, and it was also quite vulnerable to the host's ailments.
I said I was willing to.
Hive, MCU/Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. What is Hive's true origins in the MCU? The Hive played quite an interesting role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, particularly in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. In this show, their origin could be traced back to over 5,000 years ago when a rogue faction of Kree settled on Earth. They hoped to create an army of super soldiers for their empire, and they started experimenting on human beings by implanting latent genes and then activating them through the process of teragenesis. This process created a new race of Inhumans with supernatural powers, and one of their test subjects was a Mayan hunter who accidentally crossed paths with them and ended up being one of the first people to undergo teragenesis. He also received some Kree blood through transfusion, and the process ended with him transforming into an amalgamation of innumerable parasitic microorganisms. He further gained the ability to infest others, latch onto dead bodies, reanimate them, and even control other Inhumans. Soon enough, he was trained to command the Kree's army of Inhumans, and he started going by the name Alveus, which is Latin for Hive. Why was Hive exiled to Maveth? While the Kree hoped they had come one step closer to conquering the world, they were surprised when Alveus started leading humans against the Reapers to chase them off the planet. Moreover, Alveus even took control of the beacon they used to send distress calls to other planets to ensure that they would never come back. After witnessing this firsthand, the rest of the Inhumans feared Alveus' power and decided to banish him to the distant planet of Maveth with the help of a Kree portal. As he arrived on Maveth, Alveus learned that this place used to be a thriving civilization, but climate change had now reduced it to an abandoned wasteland. Back on Earth, Alveus had garnered a cult-like following among humans who believed that he was supposed to be a godlike figure. They started a secret society that aimed to bring him back to Earth and even destabilize the current rulers to make sure they were all set for Alveus' return. Over the years, this society took the form of the paramilitary terrorist organization that we now know as Hydra. As this cult evolved over the ages, it was active during World War II in 1945, when Officer Johann Schmidt separated Hydra from Nazi Germany, but not before they were defeated by Captain America. However, Hydra continued to thrive, and Arnim Zola eventually rebuilt it around the 21st century. How did Hive survive on Maveth for centuries? Around 2015, Gemma Simmons found a sword, a music box, and a bag on Maveth and concluded that these artifacts belonged to people who were sent to Maveth through a monolith to serve as Alveus' sustenance. These people were periodically sacrificed in rituals dedicated to Hive, who then fed on them and used their bodies as vessels to ensure that he didn't decay over time. As Simmons investigated further, she identified one of the victims as Lord Manzini, who was sent to Maveth by English lords in 1839. Lord Thornley also provided his insights and stated that nobody who ever traveled through the monolith made their way back to Earth, and around 1970, Nathaniel Malik met this fate when his own brother tricked him into being selected as the next sacrifice. How did Hive return to Earth? While S.H.I.E.L.D. was determined to get rid of Hydra and the monolith by striking their castle, Hive traveled through time to escape before the castle was blown up. Now that it had returned to Earth, Hive moved quickly to process Grant Ward's body and even intercept Gideon Malik. Hive then kept a low profile in Gideon Malik's secret base in Europe as he regained his strength after having spent decades decaying on Maveth. Over time, he was strong enough to face Malik, and he immediately commanded himself to get more food. Hive then spent a lot of his time feeding on raw meat and educating himself on recent technological advancements, and he saw several videos from the 20th century wars that led him to believe that humans hadn't changed one bit in the time that he was away. He also had many conversations with another Inhuman named Guerra and witnessed Grant Ward's body decay and die in front of his eyes. He also paid attention while Malik and Guerra talked about another Inhuman named Lucio who had just been captured, and got into an argument with Malik when he insinuated that Hive wasn't as strong as he had hoped. However, Malik retaliated by pointing out that Hive had failed Phil Coulson, and Hive then demonstrated his powers by turning Ward's skin into parasites and sending them after Malik and Guerra. How did Hive rebuild his body? After collecting enough information on humanity and stealing the memories of those around him, Hive looked back on Grant Ward's life and learned that he had been a dedicated Hydra soldier. He even expressed his gratitude towards Malik for sending his body to Maveth to ensure that he had a strong and resilient host to return to Earth. Malik then told Hive all about his plan to bring together an army of Inhumans and summoned Lucio to prove his point. As he removed Lucio's blindfold, the Inhuman jumped at the opportunity to use his powers against Guerra and the guards. While they were immediately paralyzed, Hive was completely immune to this attack, and he then used his cloud of parasites to brainwash Lucio and bring him under his control. He then commanded Lucio and Guerra to run operations for him while he spent his time reading books about humanity and learning more about them. Finally, Malik decided that he must have a conversation about the future and suggested that Hive could use Guerra or Lucio's body as a new host. However, Hive declared that he would not settle for an inhuman host and that he would stick to Ward's body until he found another dead human host. Soon enough, Malik left to attend a conference and put Guerra in charge of keeping an eye on Hive, unaware of the fact that Guerra was under his mind control. As soon as they were alone, Hive ordered Guerra and Lucio to find 5 human beings for a sacrifice instead of making hosts out of them. While Lucio expressed concerns over these people being innocent, Hive declared that they would serve a greater purpose with him and proceeded to stir up a tornado out of the parasites under his control. These parasites proceeded to eat away at these people's flesh, and Hive then used them to restore Grant Ward's body, even if it meant that all 5 of these humans would be reduced to slime and skeleton.
You once said the same thing about me.
How did Hive control Daisy Johnson? When Hive returned to their base with Gideon Malik, Gaira rushed to inform Hive that S.H.I.E.L.D. had gotten access to their location. He then stated that he hijacked Zephyr-1 while Lucio was on a mission to capture survivors and bring them to Hive. In the meantime, the secret warriors targeted their base, and Lincoln Campbell even captured Malik when Hive got his hands on Daisy Johnson. She was in the midst of hacking into their security system when he snuck up on her and put her under his control. He then instructed her to disassemble the secret warriors, and she divulged information about a Kree beacon at the S.H.I.E.L.D. base. He sent her on a mission to retrieve it. Daisy defeated Gaira and made her way onto Zephyr-1, where Malik was also kept in custody. They hoped to interrogate him about Hydra's future plans, while Hive reached out to a panicked Gaira and assured him that their plan was still a success now that he had a spy working at S.H.I.E.L.D. Gaira still insisted that they should find a safer spot now that Malik had been captured, when Hive revealed that Johnson had murdered him and that they needed to focus their attention on locating her and getting their hands on Malik's wealth. Hive then used Grant Ward's memories to track down Johnson's favorite place, and they were soon face to face when she confessed that Hive's control over her mind had finally given her a sense of peace. She then showed him the stolen Kree beacon and Terrigen crystals from S.H.I.E.L.D.'s base before discussing whether they would track them down while searching for her. It was around this time that she disclosed her name as Daisy, which confused Hive as he had no recollection of learning her name through Ward's memories. Daisy also confessed that she struggled with a feeling of emptiness, while Hive assured her that they would remain connected and work together in the future as they transformed Earth into a safe space for Inhumans. As they got acquainted with one another, their first mission was to visit Alicia Whitley and protect her while they used her to lure Lincoln Campbell. After recruiting Whitley, they approached J.T. James and threatened him to give them the remaining parts of the Kree beacon, even though he maintained a firm ground and refused to give in. When they were met with stubbornness, Hive and Daisy resorted to dropping a Terrigen crystal to fill the space with Terrigen mist and trigger the process of Terrigenesis that transformed J.T. James into an Inhuman as well. While he underwent that process, Hive visited Whitley while she struggled with her double's death and told her all about Campbell's survival. Soon enough, Whitley was ready to sacrifice herself for him, and things took a smooth turn when James crawled out of his cocoon as well. He had gained the ability to conjure fireballs, but the ability came with unbearable pain, which Hive then subdued by taking mental control of him. He then told him that he wouldn't leave until they got their hands on the rest of the Kree beacon, as it was the only thing that could kill him. Soon enough, they dug through James's home to find it, and Hive was quite pleased with their success as they retrieved it and filled the room with C4 to prepare for when S.H.I.E.L.D. agents barged in.
He said you'd do anything to fool me.
Gemma, please.
What was Hive's goal on Earth? Over time, Hive observed Daisy Johnson as she slowly drained her blood and watched some video feeds of Lincoln Campbell being locked away at the playground during her treatment. He approached her to discuss the situation when Leo Fitz overrode their hacking system and interrupted the feed, thereby alerting them to S.H.I.E.L.D.'s constant attempts to locate them. Soon enough, Holt and Radcliffe showed up to check up on Daisy's vitals and confirmed that they were ready for the next step in their experiment. While Johnson recovered from blood loss, Radcliffe and Hive headed to the laboratory, and Hive even questioned if their experiment would work after it had killed Kirk Vogel in the past. However, Radcliffe was confident that he had secured the right ingredients, including Kree blood, and that they just needed to get a few volunteers to get things in motion. Hive then suggested that he had the perfect set of volunteers, including people who would even serve as a gift to Radcliffe before summoning the Watchdogs. He lured them in by promising them an Inhuman in exchange, only for Hellfire to attack and disarm them the second they made their way through the alley. Hive then cornered them and declared that they would soon turn into the very thing they hated all along before taking them to Radcliffe's lab. In no time, they were locked up and subjected to the Terrigenesis process that had them screaming in agony as they underwent a painful transformation. As they unlocked the containment unit, Hive and the others were pleased to see that the Watchdogs had transformed into grotesque primitives with enhanced strength and an unwavering loyalty towards Hive. As their first mission, he asked them to get rid of Radcliffe, but eventually decided against it as he had the ability to create more of these monsters for him. He then moved on to other plans, such as overseeing Daisy while she rescued Lincoln Campbell and brought him to their base so that he could bring him under his control. He also took Daisy to see the primitives before asking her to drain all their blood so that he could use it to create more of them. In the meantime, Zephyr 1 started leveling out, and Hive directed his attention towards observing its descent when Hellfire sought him out. He raised some concerns about the primitives' appearance and suggested they should try to give them a more appealing look. In the meantime, one of the primitives carried out Guerra's corpse, and things started going haywire when a Quinjet landed on the Zephyr's roof. Hive then focused his attention on confronting it and was taken aback to see that Phil Coulson had landed on the Zephyr all alone to confront him once and for all. Hive tried to reason with him by pointing out that Coulson could not blow the plane up, as the resulting explosion would transform millions of humans into primitives due to the serum they had on board. However, Coulson didn't seem to care too much about the outcome and was determined to defeat Hive no matter what. He elaborated on his mission to help Inhumans when Hive finally shed Ward's face to reveal his true form before declaring that he would soon take over his face. He suggested that they were quite similar in nature, and their conversation went on for quite some time before Hive finally realized that he was merely talking to a hologram. All this time, Coulson was trying to distract him while S.H.I.E.L.D. agents made their way on board and overpowered the primitives. While Hive was already quite furious, his anger knew no bounds when he spotted Daisy Johnson trying to escape on a Quinjet with a nuclear bomb, and he dropped everything else to chase after her.
I'll shed this host to take you, and march down to announce to the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent.
What are Hive's powers in the MCU? For starters, Hive was an Inhuman who managed to achieve his genetic potential through the process of teragenesis, which helped him gain a plethora of powers. He transitioned from a human being into a tentacled parasitic superorganism that was created out of several individual parasites, and he also had superhuman strength, durability, senses, and stamina. He also had complete control over the individual parasites that were a part of his physiology, and he often sent them on missions to target his victims and destroy their bodies in mere seconds. One of Hive's most impressive powers was his regenerative healing factor, which was so robust that he could heal his host's skin and muscle tissues in no time. After he had restored his host's body, Hive didn't even have to rely on his army of parasites to heal or rebuild tissue, and his body regenerated almost automatically. On numerous occasions, he had bounced back from gunshots and grenade attacks without so much as a visible scar on his body. Through the process of teragenesis, Hive gained the ability to transform into a parasitic lifeform capable of latching onto human corpses as his host bodies. He could not only use them as vessels, but also mind control them and essentially possess them to the point where he gained access to their memories and personalities. Of course, this was only restricted to human hosts such as Will Daniels and Nathaniel Malik, and Hive could not implement the same techniques to gain control over Inhumans. While he could not possess them, he did have the ability to lure them under his mind control by infecting their bodies with his parasites. These creatures would soon latch onto the Inhumans' brains and nervous systems, thereby creating a bond that compelled them to obey Hive. In addition to this, he was also quite skilled at martial arts, piloting aircraft, and coming up with elaborate tactics to take his opponents out. How did Hive lose to Lash? While Hive was dealing with Coulson, he stood all alone on the platform's base, waiting for Lincoln Campbell to return in the Quinjet. Much to his shock, S.H.I.E.L.D. deceived him by sending Lash instead, and even Hive didn't have the courage to face him head-on. He ran away before Lash could get his hands on him, but he severely underestimated Lash's strength as he continued to chase him. While Hive sent a bunch of deadly parasites to corner him, Lash destroyed them with an energy blast in the blink of an eye before targeting Hive and blasting a hole through his chest. Thankfully, Hive had enough energy to summon the primitives before things got worse, giving him enough time to fend for himself while Lash was preoccupied killing them. After getting rid of everyone in his path, Lash made his way towards Hive while Daisy tried to defend him, but all the blood loss from the tests finally got the best of her as she fell to the floor. Lash then used his powers to suck out all the parasites that were a part of her physique, which ended Hive's control over them. While it seemed like this would be the end of Hive's story arc, Hellfire intervened and killed the monster with his flaming chain before he could claim any more lives. What happened during Hive's final battle? When Daisy ran away with the nuclear bomb, Hive managed to sneak up on her while she was loading it onto the Quinjet. He was certain that he could use Grant Ward's memories to gain control over the Quinjet, but Daisy put her foot down and tried to insist that Inhumans had a purpose. She further revealed that Lash saved her life so that she could sabotage Hive's plan, and Lincoln Campbell also showed up at the scene even though Hive was under the impression that he had died. While Campbell knocked Daisy off the Quinjet, he secured himself in the jet before locking Hive in as well and speeding upwards until they reached outer space. It was around this point that they realized that they were out of power, and Hive accepted his fate and came to terms with the fact that he was looking death in the eye. The two of them started floating around space when Hive confessed that he only ever hoped to make the world a better place and that he must certainly feel a duty to protect humans if he was up here sacrificing himself. As they continued to have this conversation, the nuclear bomb that was strapped onto the Quinjet finally exploded and claimed both their lives, bringing an end to Hive's story arc. What is Hive's legacy post-death? After Hive's death, all the surviving Inhumans were quite traumatized by the entire incident, and Daisy Johnson's guilt over Lincoln's death even compelled her to leave S.H.I.E.L.D. and pursue a career as a vigilante. J.T. James also felt responsible for everything he had done after unlocking his Inhuman powers under Hive, and he started working with the Watchdogs to wipe out any surviving Inhumans. After coming across Hive, Glenn Talbot also made the decision to make some changes to S.H.I.E.L.D. operations, and they signed the Soviet Accords and even appointed Jeffrey Mace as their new director. Over a year after Hive's death, he continued to haunt S.H.I.E.L.D. agents as a manifestation of their fears, and this was first seen when a recreation came to life in the Fear Dimension due to Coulson's past experiences with him. Over time, another recreation of the Hive was created from Gemma Simmons' memories, but these were the last few crumbs of his appearances in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Dimension. It's our fears come to life. The gravitatorium device that we used to seal the wreck.
What does Hive really look like? When Hive invited himself to the Malik mansion and engaged in conversation with Gideon and Stephanie Malik, he soon found himself facing Hydra's inner circle. During this secret meeting, Hive declared that it was time for him to reveal his true form after thanking the Maliks for their contribution to his journey back to Earth. While some of his devotees wondered if he was truly an inhuman god that they had been worshipping all this time, Hive took off his host's face and revealed his true identity as a blob of mass with tentacles sprouting from his flesh, much to the horror of all assembled. Marvelous verdict! And with that, we've explored all the ways in which Hive terrorizes his victims, as well as his compelling origin story. As he went on to create an army of Inhumans to do his best at defeating S.H.I.E.L.D., he served as an impressive antagonist in Marvel Comics as well as the cinematic universe, and we hope you enjoyed exploring his story arc with us. If you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Otherwise, thanks for watching, stay safe out there, and have a marvelous day.